Now the British government introduces a budget. The man involved is the man who ran down the National Health Service, Jeremy Hunt. I say so carefully. Jeremy Hunt is now the Chancellor of the Exchequer, having failed in every other government portfolio that he's carried. And another former failed health secretary is in the jungle on reality TV. Maybe my next guest has a view on that. He is the young, effervescent firebrand and now elected councillor in the Royal Borough of Kingston, along with his grandmother, who won a smashing by-election victory this week. So his family has 2 members on the Kingston Council now. I suppose that makes James Giles the leader of that group, or maybe his grandmother's going to pool seniority. Who knows? Let's ask him. James Giles, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Answer that first of all. Who's the leader, you or your granny?
I'll be taking the position of George, and it'll be a fun ride, I'm sure.
Okay, give her my congratulations, please, and the congratulations of all of the viewers. Let's start with the ridiculous before going on to the banal. How did it come to pass that Matt Hancock, the former health secretary, who had to resign in disgrace, having been caught on his own office CCTV, groping his visitor, with whom he has now eloped, and presumably he's in the jungle to make money to keep her in the style to which she was formerly accustomed, which will not be easy, as her former husband is a multi-millionaire. Go ahead, James.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the first time I came on this show, we spoke about the now former Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, going down under to eat camel toes and do goodness knows what else. And it seems Matt Hancock is carrying on that fine tradition of Tory MPs. I believe the latest is that he was eating a kangaroo's penis, among other things. So, you know, it's clear that Matt Hancock doesn't have a future in British frontline politics after that really rather appalling incident. Whilst we were all locked up in our homes, not able to see our loved ones, he was, shagging it up with his political assistant, of all people, funded by the taxpayer. So, I'm quite sure it's about trying to make money for Mr. Hancock. It's about him trying to develop a new career, I'm sure, perhaps become an Ed Balls-esque kind of figure. The only problem is that, unlike Ed Balls, who didn't really have much going for him, and as a result, people didn't really know who he was when he was an MP or what he stood for, people definitely know what Matt Hancock stands for and what he's willing to do to try and boost his image. And it would appear that Matt Hancock has gone down under to, if you'll pardon the phrase, eat cock.
Yeah, well, personally I prefer the camel toe to the camel's penis, but that's just my preference. The ugliness of it all is leading to an atmosphere in the country, so far as I can see, in which Hancock is going to come out even more hated than he was when he went in, which won't do him a great deal of good in any new career he seeks to launch.
No, absolutely. I mean, Matt Hancock is, by all accounts, the second highest paid contestant on that reality TV show this year. I believe the highest paid is the singer Boy George. But he's earning a very hefty appearance fee for doing this. It's in the mid-6 figures. And who knows what will come out of it. I mean, when Nadine Dorries took to the jungle, she got a book deal, and now she's set at the end of this parliamentary term to end up with a life peerage in the House of Lords. I can't quite see the same outcome for Matt Hancock, but they say any publicity is good publicity, and given that no Prime Minister will ever appoint him to their cabinet again, not even the doomed Liz Truss appointed Matt Hancock in the dying days of her government, you know, he really has cooked his goose. So I assume he's trying to find a new income source for him and perhaps his secretary to, live a rather life of luxury whilst the rest of the country suffers at the hands of what has been 12 years of Tory failure, made much worse by Trussonomics and the autumn statement, which will be coming out this Thursday.
So tell us about Thursday. What's likely to be in it? What pain do they have in store for us?
Well, look, Jeremy Hunt, and I'll also pronounce his name carefully, and we won't want any gaffes on air. Jeremy Hunt, in the past, was known as the butcher of the National Health Service, but it looks like he's about to become the butcher of all government services. I mean, he's been left with a really rather dire situation, a £50 billion black hole in the country's finances, largely as a result of Liz Truss's disastrous and short-lived economic policies. And so he's got £50 billion worth to make up for. Now, he's got a number of options. Stealth taxes would be the most obvious move for him to do so. Passing on, increasing things like inheritance tax, lowering inheritance tax thresholds, increasing the amount of inheritance tax people pay. He could try and slash departmental budgets, but as we know, departments like the health service and social care are already stretched to the bare bones and to the limit. And so he would really struggle, I think, to find palatable cuts within that. He could try and pass the buck on to local authorities. He could increase council tax significantly, increase the burden on local authorities to deliver things like social care. Now, of course, full disclosure, I am in local government and I personally wouldn't want to see that, but it's perhaps more palatable than some of the other options. And the other would be, of course, to lower the threshold at which people begin paying the top rate of income tax. At the moment, it is £150,000 you have to earn before you start paying that top 50% rate of income tax. And there's an argument that in these times when everyone's struggling, that actually £150 is a rather large sum of money. My issue, though, with it, George, isn't that the government is looking to increase taxes. If we're increasing taxes to spend on public services to improve society, I usually have no issue with that. My problem is that we're increasing taxes to pick up the mess that was left by Liz Truss and her cronies, who will now force through some really damaging decisions on the people of Britain. And I think that really is something that is quite shocking and appalling.
I'll give you an idea. I paid more tax last year than Shell, the oil company, did in Britain. So did you. So did every British person watching this. I know that because they paid nothing at all. What about a windfall tax on the oil and gas and energy companies that are raking in super profits, undreamt of profits, or supermarkets which are raking in record profits? What about a windfall tax on the richest companies in Britain?
Well, that would certainly make sense, wouldn't it? But of course, the Conservatives, I'm sure, wouldn't want to upset lots of their donors who, let us not forget, give millions to the party every year. Of course, they wouldn't want to see that. Now, if Labour had anything about them, they would surely be suggesting something like this. And the autumn statement, when it comes out on Thursday, I think will be a bitter pill for Labour, because Labour has, in the past, agreed with some of the Trussonomics proposed. They agreed with reversing the increase in national insurance. They agreed with lowering the amount of income tax that people pay at the basic rate. They agreed with a lot of these measures that have left the country in a mess. Now, the government is looking to, in fact, cut the amount of support it will give households in energy bills from April. It was meant to be for 2 years, but Jeremy Hunt is set to cut that back to only a 6-month support package. It would make a huge amount of sense to the people in this country to take off the rich and the greedy and give it to the poor, a Robin Hood tax, if you will. The windfall tax makes perfect sense, and it bemuses me as to why the Conservatives don't pursue this option. Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, was adamant that he would not pursue it. They have done a very small windfall tax, but it really is a very odd state of affairs for this Conservative government. I think they're dead. I think they're out of ideas. And they're having to embrace ideas that previously they would never have countenanced in order to make up for their economic mess. But yes, I would love to see a windfall tax. I think it's one of the most blindingly obvious ways to plug some of this shortfall that could really help the ordinary people of the country.
How is, finally, thanks James for stepping in, how is the premiership of Sunak? I saw him as a kind of miniature Tony Blair, but having seen him at the dispatch box and some of his public statements, he ain't no Tony Blair. He really doesn't have the aplomb, the polish, the ability to fake the sincerity that Blair had. At least that's my take. What's yours?
Mine is much the same. Look, let's be quite clear. Rishi Sunak is a placeholder for the Conservative Party. The government is collapsing before our very eyes, and it will only be a matter of time, I believe, before a general election will have to be called. The options for the Conservative Party are pretty grim. They've had a disastrous leader in Liz Truss, who will be, I think, erased from the history books. Such was the shortness of her tenure at number 10. And Rishi Sunak is just there until the Conservatives can go into the wilderness and perhaps try and find their soul again and find what they really stand for. So I don't think Rishi will ever really have much time to make much of an impression on the country. The one thing I will give credit to the Conservatives for is they appeared, for a time at least, to have mastered something that no other party has ever managed in British politics, which is to reinvent themselves time and time again while still in government. Parties normally need a period in opposition to do that, but when you think of the 12 years the Conservatives have had in power, Cameron to May to Johnson to Truss to Sunak, it really is a remarkable feat that they are managing to cling on for so long. They are the great survivors, but I think for them their luck's run out. They've come to the end of the road, and they will need some time to regroup. The problem they've got, though, George, is they are so poorly performing in the polls that they could well end up with less than 200 seats in Parliament come the next election if they aren't careful. And so who will they be left with? There's no obvious heir to the throne. And so we could be seeing an extended period with the Conservatives in opposition. But, the Labour Party moving to the right under Keir Starmer, will it be any different? I think that's the question that will be on lots of people's minds. How will Labour deliver differently for the people of Britain? And at the moment, I'm certainly unclear on what Labour are offering.